Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is Phil Ferris, and welcome to the show. My guest today is certified life coach Tom Wendt. If you're struggling in some areas of your life and want to move forward from stop to start, from procrastination to action, from self-doubt to sound decisions, Tom Wendt will partner with you so you can rely more on your abilities than your excuses. As a certified life coach, Tom has helped scores of people free themselves from the stress and anxiety of uncertainty, reluctance to step out of their comfort zone, and fear of greater success. Tom has helped both individuals and small business owners set clear, concise, meaningful goals and then meet and surpass them. Tom believes that we are each our own greatest asset, and that there is no challenge outside of us that is greater than the power within us. He encourages all of us to take the leap and say yes to a more exciting, fulfilling, and meaningful life. Tom invites you to step out of your comfort zone and into your possibility zone through life coaching. He is also the author of the best-selling book, Live It, Really Live It. Tom, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Phil. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for this opportunity.
Now, let me kind of begin, because life coaching is somewhat of a new profession. How would someone know that they could benefit from working with a life coach?
Well, I think there's a number of ways. If an individual is experiencing the frustration or the angst associated with procrastination, with putting things off that they know need to be done, I can help them, and in fact have helped many people. If they are experiencing the pain of loneliness, we can help find ways to simply get them out more, to maybe help find a partner that would be just perfect for them. And if they're experiencing self-doubt, always wondering, always questioning themselves as to whether I made the right decision or not, we have tools that can help them gain their self-confidence, help them simply rely more on their intuition and their imagination than perhaps their history.
Okay. Now, so a lot of people think that, if I've got a problem, if I'm kind of stuck at a transition or a crossroad, that I can just work through it myself, and that, but that's not necessarily the case. So, what are the advantages of working with a life coach versus trying to just tough it out and do it on your own?
That's a great question, because really often we do that very thing. We do have a problem, we tough it out, or we find resolution, we solve the problem. And then there's those places in our lives where we can't, where we maybe keep trying over and over again, or maybe we keep trying what hasn't worked. And what stops many people from facing the more difficult decisions and actions they have in their life is the start. What I do is I help them get started. We help identify what needs to happen, and then we start taking small steps in the direction of what they need to do to resolve the issue, to have greater clarity when it comes to resolving the issue. I mean, sometimes the biggest part of a problem is we don't know what we really want. A person who says, I want to be more successful. Well, okay, what does success mean to you? Well, I'm not sure, might be the answer. Well, we need to know precisely what it is we're seeking in order to find it. Okay,
so can you give us perhaps a specific example of how you help someone get the clarity of what the problem is that allowed you then to come up with a solution?
Yeah, what happens is often is once we have the clarity, we stop ourselves. For example, I recall working with a client. The very first session, she said that one of her visions for her life was to become a writer like Anne Lamott, who writes essays. So this individual wanted to write essays, and I said, well, all right, let's just hold it out there and let's see what happens in this next week or so that will support you in that idea. And do some work also, see if you can find resources to help you. The very next session, she says, Tom, you won't believe what happened. I have a good friend who's offering a creative writing class at the college, the community college, and she's invited me to attend. So I'm just and I was happy to hear that. So she had clarity what she wanted. She had the results there, that she had a method to get what she wanted. But then here's what happened, Phil. And this was this was a couple late fall in the year. She says, but it's going to be dark out, and I'm going to be tired after work, and you never know what the weather is at that time of year. And, maybe I'll wait till the next class. So here she had her clarity. She had her avenue to what she wanted, and then she fogged up the whole set of circumstances by coming up with reasons of self-doubt. So what I did with her was simply say, well, let's take a look at this. Everything you just gave me were facts that are true, but facts don't have to stop you from following your dreams. And ultimately, we discussed it through, and we discussed how, yes, it can be cold, it can be dark, she can be tired, and she can still do this. So it was through coaching that helped her not only find the clarity, but also then put that clarity into action and step into the class.
Okay. What are some other, now you talk about people get some clarity, but then they start coming up with excuses. So why is it that when we start to see something that we want, that we start finding reasons not to move forward? What causes people, and I've been at that point too, so I'm not exempt from it, but what causes people to prevent themselves from moving to that next level, which would give them more success and happiness?
Yeah, I think it's common. I too have experienced it. And what I sense and what I hear from people is usually it's based on some kind of fear, some kind of future-based fear. Something's going to happen. Perhaps they'll fail. Perhaps an outcome will occur that they can't handle. It could also be based on self-doubt. Well, I don't know if I'm educated enough. I don't know if I have the experience. Or it could be history. It could be that, I tried this once before and it didn't work. But it almost always comes down to fear as I hear it. Reluctance to move out of our comfort zone, where we think we know what's going to happen. Even when our comfort zone isn't very comfortable, it's a known quantity. And so it's fear of fear of the unknown and fear of the future. And what I like to say is the best way to predict the future is to create it. And we create it by becoming clear on what we want, and then just taking sometimes mini steps. Sometimes they're referred to as baby steps in the direction of what you want. And then once that step is taken, the next step becomes clear, and soon we've gotten into the start of whatever needs to be done. And once it's started, then the inertia of that continues on, along with where I support them in continuing on. Okay.
And again, could you give an example of how you help someone fight through that fear and then create the type of positive momentum they need to sustain their success?
It's funny. I'm thinking of a couple of clients I've worked with, and income taxes were like this sword hanging over them, that they had one individual hadn't paid. I think he was current on his current income taxes, but hadn't paid income taxes from a couple of years ago. And I said, okay, why not? Oh, there's just so much information to gather. I'm not sure where to find it. And those were the words. But what I really heard was just reluctance and fear of doing it. So what we did is we broke it down into I think what he was looking at was the whole issue of and responsibility of going into the taxes and finishing them and all that needed to be done. So what we were doing is then we did is we broke it down into kind of bite-sized pieces. I said, okay, how long or by when can you have all the information you need gathered? And do no more. I said, just finding information, the receipts, and anything else you need. When can you do that? And he said, well, I could do that this week. I said, well, why don't you do that and then stop? And then each week we would do a little more. Okay, now that you have this information, what do you think you need to do next? And Phil, what I like to do, and what I always do, is use their ideas based on my questions instead of my ideas, so that they're following their intuition and their imagination. So then once the receipts were found, he said, well, next I need to get all the forms I need. Good. When can you have that done? So it was a step-by-step process. Ultimately, he ended up working with an accountant. Another person dreaded income tax because they never knew what they were going to have to pay at the end of the year, and they didn't have all the information in a manageable form. So once again, step by step, I said, okay, where do you think you need to start to just begin this process of getting your information in a manageable form? And through that process of questioning and, again, having them come up with their own answers, that person now has a bookkeeper in their business, an accountant, and taxes aren't an issue anymore.
Hey, now, you said that it's important that they use their ideas, and that and it also seems that it's important that they do the action. Why is that? Why is it important that it's their ideas?
Well, because I think, first of all, we implement and we can strategize our own ideas better than someone else's, especially when, if we're moving along in a process and it's our idea and the process hits a wall. Well, if I'm trying to implement someone else's idea, I'm thinking, gee, I wonder what Tom would tell me to do now. But if I'm implementing my own ideas, I think, okay, I've hit a wall here. Here's what I want to accomplish. So here's what I'll do. I think it was Dwight Eisenhower who said, plans are useless, but planning is essential. And I think what that means is we need to create plans on what we want to do. And if they're our plans, then when the plans go awry, we can access our own, I'll say that part of our thinking, or they're part of our being that doesn't even deal in words, just feelings and senses. That says, I need to go somewhere else here. Maybe I'll try this. And if we're working from our own imagination and our own intuition, that's pretty easy to do. But if we're working from somebody else's, then we hit walls, and then we need to go back to our resource. And again, then we're stuck. By following our own ideas and thinking, it's easier to move forward and easier to implement them also.
Now, what would you say the biggest value that a life coach that you bring to the client? What do you bring? What do you give them that they don't have on their own?
Well, I'll rephrase that if you don't mind, and I'll say that, I don't know that I can give them anything. What I can do is I can draw from them the enormous power that they have within them. So if I'm giving them anything, it's the ability to kind of dip within that well of potentiality they have and make those potentials reality. And I do that by having conversation, asking probing questions, always respectfully, never, ever criticizing, only identifying issues that need addressing. And then through the questions, having them answer questions like, well, then what do you think you need to do here? Or if somebody else came to you with this problem, what would you tell them to do? And then identifying the steps. And then what they gain from this, Bill, is self-confidence, more self-esteem, a better feeling for themselves and their own thought process.
Okay, so you're not giving them something that they don't have. You're helping them discover what they do have, and then encouraging them to actually use it.
Absolutely. I've heard the phrase that in any day we have, I've heard the number varies, but anywhere from 10,000 conversations to 50,000 conversations a day. Phil, most of those conversations are with ourselves. And the self-talk is what determines our actions, because our words are like the seeds of our actions. And so if I can help change that self-talk to doubt and wondering and fear to here's what I need to do, here's what I want to do, here's what I see for myself, then yes, then it's a drawing out of what's already there and simply putting it into action.
Can you describe a little bit more about changing that self-talk? Because it happens, most of those conversations happen on an unconscious level. We're not aware we're actually having them until we bring them to the consciousness. So how do you transform those conversations so that they are enabling as opposed to disabling?
Isn't that true? A good question. And you made a point too. You said most of those are unconscious. And so what I stress is mindfulness. Kind of a notice what you're noticing approach to our thinking. And then I'll say, so when you find yourself in your self-doubt or you're wondering, don't deny it's there. Honor that it's there. Well, kind of say, but gently say, maybe, oh, there I go, I'm doing it again. I'm talking myself out of something, or being self-critical, or I'm letting my history define me. I say, just notice that. And then focus on something that you want in life or that you enjoy in life, not necessarily associated with the problem they might be trying to resolve or the issue they're dealing with. Simply change your focus, change your kind of the vibration of your thinking. So you might think, for me, I would think of, I have grandchildren. I think of my grandchildren or some family activities. I love to walk in nature. So if I'm telling myself, well, I don't know if I can do this, I've never done this before, simply change that thinking to placing myself back at there are a couple conservation areas here I love to walk, and just put myself in those places again to raise my thinking. And then from that kind of thinking, solutions will come to me. I mean, haven't you ever had a problem in your mind and maybe you step into the shower or you step out of the car in a parking lot and the solution hits you because you're not focusing on the problem at the time. Your mind is just open. So I try to redirect their thinking by having them notice what they're noticing to a more open mindset or more mindful mindset also.
Okay. I think that because the unconscious mind never stops thinking. Those ideas and conversations never stop. They're always going. We just may not be aware. We have to bring them into mindfulness. Do it on purpose as opposed to force it. And that's, I think, you talk a lot about letting the intuition take its course. In that sense, I think by redirecting it to a positive place allows those things to surface. What are some maybe little-known pitfalls or common mistakes people make when they get stuck in a problem? And how do you help them overcome those situations?
Well, if we're stuck in a problem, and believe me, I have experience at this too. If I'm stuck in the problem, what I tend to do and what I hear others tend to do is ruminate on it, just think about it over and over again. And I've got to find a solution. When we're stuck because the self-talk is keeping us stuck. And sometimes, and when that's occurring, we need some kind of redirection of our thinking. We may need some help from another individual, perhaps a life coach, perhaps a friend, a trusted friend that you could call feel not necessarily for advice, but to feel heard, because I think one of my strengths is I'm a good listener. And when we feel heard, I think is when the healing begins and when the change begins. We don't even need to hear responses to what we've said, But feeling heard is what then opens our mind up to explore new options. Because if we're stuck, chances are we're just trying harder at what hasn't worked. And I think it's Price Pritchett in one of his books says, trying harder at what hasn't worked isn't the answer. What we need to do is try something new. And that means we have to step out of our comfort zone. And when that occurs, more self-talk can occur that keeps us where we are. And so that's why we need help. Again, we don't need help throughout the day with many of our problems and issues. But when we do, when we are stuck and we've tried everything we can, that's where a life coach can really help.
Okay. Now, recently you wrote a book. It was published on Amazon. It's in Kindle, and it's a paperback form. It's called Live It, Really Live It. What inspired you to write the book? And tell us a little bit about what it contains.
You know what inspired me to write the book is my nature is to work with people. I love to watch people play more of the music that is within them. That is, play more of their desires that are within them, realize the potential that is within them. And what I see is most people don't realize those things. Most people talk themselves out of what they would really like in life. For some reason, if you just listen to conversations around you, I believe you will most often hear people talk about what they don't like as opposed to what they do. The weather, the economy, politics. And the reason I wrote the book is here are some definite tools to get you focusing on what you want in life, and then to implement small steps to gain and experience what you want in life. And once we know what we want, then our actions should be in service to what we want, not what we don't want. And each chapter deals with a specific issue. It could be with loss. It could be with being receptive to good things that come to you. I see people and work with people who are not receptive to success, even though they believe and they really do want it. And so I wrote the book, so I want to say to people, come on, you can do it. Live your life. I mean, really live it. You know, I've heard it said, everyone's going to die, but not everybody lives. And so I want people to live. And I think it's Mary Morrissey that says, some people live 90 years and some people live 1 year 90 times. I want them to live 90 years. I want them to live each day as a new adventure, as an excitement, learning from the past days, but not necessarily repeating it unless it serves them.
Okay. It's a very inspiring book. It's very concise. And I think the thing I like about it, it gives people the permission that maybe the unspoken permission that they're looking for to say, you can do this.
Absolutely. It's funny. We are, sometimes I say I'm not a therapist and life coaching is not therapy. I've had enough therapy to know, to believe this, that most of us are 5-year-olds running around in 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70-year-old bodies. And that what happened to us early in life still impacts us today. And I help individuals break out of that family system kind of thinking. I was working with someone just today who said in their family, they were the one who made things, who calmed things over, who made sure things got done. And those are fine attributes, but if they're taken to an extreme, then they become a liability. And sometimes those family system dynamics carry with us throughout our lives. And again, if they're valuable, fine, but if they're carried to an extreme, they control us, then they don't serve us. And I help them look at those things and say, okay, whatever caused this, here's what do you need to do now and move through that.
Okay. So, through your experience in working with people and also your own, from your business experience and experience in the ministry, what's the most important question people can ask themselves when they find themselves, stuck or at that crossroads?
It's interesting. I heard a phrase once. It was kind of funny. It doesn't answer your question directly, but it gets to it. Have you ever heard the phrase, "There is no such thing as a stupid question"? And I would say there is. And that question is, why is this happening to me again? And it's because we keep trying the same thing over and over again. So if a person is stuck, if a person is just at wit's end, what can you do differently? What can you do differently? And then take one small, very small step in the direction of doing something differently. And trust your intuition and your imagination more than your fears. Fears are important. They're important to look at them. But most fears, again, are future-based. And let's create our future by taking steps in the direction of the future we want to live. So the question I would ask a person to ask themselves if they're really stuck is, what is something else? What is something I can do differently that my body is telling me to try, that my intuition is telling me to try?
Okay. And kind of applying what you said earlier, I think when you're stuck, the first thing to do is become mindful of what question you're asking yourself. And if it's, why am I always doing this? And that becomes apparent to me, I realize that's the wrong question. And just that awareness then gives me permission to use my intuition to ask a different question. But if I don't know that that's the question I keep on asking, I'm going to get stuck, continue to be in that same mode until I become aware and switch it. And sometimes you can do that on your own. Other times it takes a life coach to help you become aware of what that question is and what my options might be. So again, there are times where we can solve problems ourselves. There are times when a life coach can really be that catalyst that can help break through things that you couldn't necessarily do on your own or as fast. So if someone is considering evaluating, deciding to use a life coach, what are the things they should consider before they hire or start working with a life coach?
There's a couple of things I would suggest. First of all, they make decisions every day where they don't need a life coach, and they need to honor that and realize the abilities they have and the power they have. And if they are at a place where, gosh, I'm just stuck, and they may be dealing with some loss, they may be dealing with some significant issues, a job loss, relationship difficulties, or perhaps maybe one of the lighter things in life. Hey, I'm retiring and I'm not sure what I want to do with my life. Or I've been retired, I'm getting on in years, I need to clear out clutter. What they would want to consider is a couple things. Is, can they do it on their own? I would suggest first, can you do it on your own? And if you can't, then what kind of help do I need? Am I willing to spend the time to bring this result into my life? And do I really want it? Because in life coaching, I can't do anything for anybody. All I can do is come up with the actions that they themselves know they need. And then are they willing to step out of their comfort zone? That would be another question they ask themselves. Am I willing to step out of my comfort zone and get something done here to accomplish this? And life coaching, there's a financial cost to it also. Am I willing to spend the financial resources? And, what's important too is when they decide that, yes, I need help, the most important thing, I think, between a life coach and a client is that relationship. So get a feeling give a couple of life coaches a call. See if how you feel about the relationship with them as a person. That's why I offer a complimentary coaching session. They're done over the phone. They last up to an hour. And I know that the individual would leave that session with some direction, and often it leads into additional coaching. But they would need to get a feel for me as to, do I feel comfortable working with this guy? And if they do, then that opens the door to unlimited possibilities.
Okay, so if people wanted to reach out to you and find out if you're the life coach, that's right for them, or if they want to get more information about you, where should they go and what should they do? Well,
they're free to call me on my cell phone. The number is 630-306-2278. They can examine my website and view it and look through it. And my website is thenextstep4.me, and the 4 is spelled out F-O-R. So it's thenextstep4.me. And you learn a lot about me and what I believe in and what I offer through my website. And there's also a form there to fill out if they'd like, and so that they can tell me a little bit about the challenges they're experiencing, and then I'll contact them and we'll set up a complimentary phone session as a result.
Okay, great. And then also the book, Live It, Really Live It, is on Amazon.com, both in Kindle format and a paperback. So they can go to Amazon.com and get a copy of that book too, and I would recommend they do that. So Tom, thank you so much for sharing your insights and the offer to the listeners to find out if life coaching and specifically working with you can help them break through and start living the dream, the life of their dreams. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's been a pleasure. And my last bit of advice to people, I don't usually give a lot of advice, is the only thing they should doubt are their doubts, because they have the power within them.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.